Regarding Tonio, a Requiem novel. What to say about a fine, talented young man whose life was cut short just before his 22nd birthday? A boy who, furthermore, was my son, my only child. Tonio was hit by a car on Whitsunday 2010 while riding his bike through nighttime Amsterdam. On the operating table, it became clear he wouldn't pull through and he passed away some 12 hours later in the presence of his parents. I've published a number of prose requiems over the past few decades about two childhood sweethearts who died young, a cousin who was killed in an accident, an artist friend, my father, my mother. But how could I ever imagine having to write such a requiem for my own son? Sure, I could imagine him writing one for me, but the other way around? If someone had suggested it to me before, I would have cried, "Cut it out. There's no way I could even do that." Nevertheless, I started on a requiem for Tonio almost immediately after Whitsun 2010. Because it was impossible for me not to. I needed to keep him warm and alive as long as possible, even though all I could turn to was words. There were still so many uninformed people who needed to get to know him. The Requiem novel came out on the first anniversary of Tonio's death, the 23rd of May 2011. To my astonishment, but holding Tonio's memory dear, some 200,000 copies of the book have been sold in just over 2 years that have passed since then. The novel has been published in German and Chinese. English and Hungarian translations are in the works. People are working on a motion picture based on the novel. Tonio, a Requiem novel, is the story of a young man with a zest for living who is snatched from our midst, and of the gaping hole this leaves in the lives of the two people who were his father and mother. Like a pair of desperate private detectives, the boy's parents reconstruct their son's final days, final hours, final seconds. As a result, at points the book almost resembles a thriller. Although, unfortunately, the events recounted in its pages are only too true. The parents question Tonio's friends, fellow students, and finally the girl who was extensively photographed by their son, a passionate photographer, 3 days before his death. She was probably the nexus of a tender romance that was not to be. Although each of these paths inevitably ends in death, by retracing Tonio's steps over those last few days, his parents are able to feel a bond with their son up until his final moments.